think right now we're really polishing what we can without changing too much the shots, because we want to have things to show in Annecy, which is mid-June in 3 weeks. And so we want to, finish what we have right now in terms of film shots. Francesco had a very specific idea and worked with Yalti on the breakdowns and the transitions between the film shots and the breakdowns.
At the start of the year, Francesco made an announcement that we would be essentially not going through with the entire film and instead making a shorter version showcase that pretty much cherry picks some of the shots from the film, and then we're going to push those all the way through. But it's not meant to be necessarily a representative of the film, but instead give you a little glimpse of it and then feature some breakdowns and a peek behind the curtain of how it was actually made, these shots.
So I pitched to the guys the idea that to create continuity between what we see in the tests and what we see in this next sequence is that basically she's standing and then she just falls and she breaks.
And effects-wise, how is that going to happen?
It's gonna be done with whatever we can.
So you can tell from his face it's going to be expensive.
I think that this is achievable with not too much effort, just like that's why Pablo is mocking it up, and we can see how it feels in the overall flow of the edit. And if at some point I hear that there is major concerns, it's unappealing, it's ugly, it's too much work, I don't want to do it, we make a fade down and we are done. And then Pablico can go on holidays. I don't want to.
So the biggest challenge is the fact that usually when we do these kind of things, we have an actual film that we're all racing to finish. And then once it's finished, we can kind of dig back in our files and we can come up with proposals how to showcase and do breakdowns. The problem now is it's not really a film and it's not finished yet. We had to I had to come up with a proposal that I was pretty sure was not necessarily the thing everybody had in mind, but at least it would immediately get people talking. And now I think we have a clearer idea of what we need. The two guys that need to showcase it are the two guys that are extremely busy right now, Andy and Simon, that are trying to finish the film parts of the showcase.
It's like a detail shot of it or so, because right now it's a background element and it could be nice to show at least just a section of it.
Like a diorama kind of thing.
Yeah, like a diorama could be nice. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things that we can potentially show. My confidence level of committing to anything right now is very low for things that we haven't done yet. Yeah. Things that we have done, sure, we can make a more detailed breakdown, with the boat. We can see how we want to show these things off.
I mean, that's the problem right now. We shouldn't commit ourselves to blending from one thing to the next, because that will just make it impossible to add new things once we make them.
Yalti has been, pulling hair, just figuring things out.
It's not that's the problem. That's the problem. It's not, you use the word breakdown, which is what I tried to make, but eventually Francesco wanted it to be the other way around. It's more of a build-up. So some of the things are deconstructions of the shots, and in other cases the shot gets built from something very simple to something more complicated.
A showcase can be many things, right? What is it that we want to focus on? Do we want to show the interface of Blender, or do we want to have a very sleek, polished, sexy visual? And because we're the Blender studio and our goal has always been to support the Blender development, then it became quite clear that we wanted to show more of Blender itself and how it actually looks like for the artists working in it.
I think at this point I've made 12 iterations to a varying degree. You're watching this in the future, maybe when this is done, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the hell it looks like. We're still working on it right now.
Simon has been working really hard on the effects. Vivian has been working hard on finalizing the clouds, the backgrounds that need to really finish up sequences. And yeah, I don't know what Pablico and Rick are going to be doing tomorrow, basically.
But yeah, I've been doing some stuff. I think it's fun to
for the journals. I think it could be super cool when Simon has time to give us a dumb stuff, because you're doing stuff, but he said I know why it's going slow.
Yeah.
That means you don't know what the fuck you're doing.
Hey, it's cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. You look like a Picasso.
I wasn't gonna say it, but
But it's true, eh? Look, I see this, I'm like,
dude, here we go.
like a fucking kid could do that.
It went from fucking Picasso.
I mean,
You're just-
look, Picasso need to learn how to draw good. Animation in gold is almost done. I worked on the part that she was with the whale swimming up. I worked in the last shot, and I worked also on the meeting between the whale and Mikasa, like the last part of the shots that we were assigned to. Now I'm doing some stuff with the shards that's making everything a bit slower, so I'm glad I didn't have to do all that shots, that it was Rick, the one that was assigned to that. Because everything is a bit slower, so it's a bit more difficult to animate on real time.
2 shots I have been working on are where Mikasa, the main character, has been scattered on the floor and her pieces are slowly reassembling, and as she gets reassembled, she struggles to stand up. All of these little shards are hand animated. There were around 150 of them, or like even more, I think. I didn't touch all of them, but it was quite labor intensive to have each piece like come back and reassemble her that way.
We have a pretty good idea of what is going to end up in the breakdown, but right now we're just focusing on finishing the film part of the whole edit. I'm mostly working on finishing them in terms of lighting and some temp compositing. Right now I'm trying to finish the chunk that is called 230 sinking. That is the moment when Mikasa lands in the water and there's bubbles coming out of her head. Simon finished the effects work for that one, and this week I mostly focused on getting little fish swarms everywhere in the background. Those are animated with geometry nodes. They're just sprinkled throughout the scenes, and then working on it shot by shot to fix the lighting and some of the shots, match the continuity a little bit better.
Yesterday was one of those days where just everything keeps breaking over and over again, so it's not that much progress. But I went from this for the wake to this, making it also more in line with like the scribbles from the wave crest phone.
I'm hypnotized at this point. I might go to sleep watching this. Like for real, I'm getting like...
We just have a couple more weeks left before Annecy, and that's when we wanted to have all of the shots that we still picked to implement for the film done as much as possible. There's probably still going to be a bunch of polish happening after that, but we want to have them in a nice, presentable state. And a lot of the shots were still missing some of the effects, like for example the interaction between the boat and the water. So last week I spent a little bit more time iterating on those effects to make them come together, where the boat is developing the wake behind its trajectory, and some water is spraying wherever it actually clashes into the waves, and some overall foam on the wave crests that's kind of developing as the water is getting more turbulent. Those things are all set up. I'd like to still iterate over them a little bit more on a shot basis, and then tweaking that also for the storm sequence where things just get more rowdy and more turbulent. The idea is that we represent all the detail with the foam and the turbulent water with the brushstrokes. So what I'm doing is just generating curves from some simulation that then are rendered as brushstrokes just like anything else. I took some inspiration from what we did on our previous production, Wing It, where we did a similar thing for the development of some of the smoke effects, which were these 2D lines in camera space that were also like developing like puffy clouds kind of, which is a different thing, but it's a similar approach where we have some simplified geometry in curves that is simulated over time and grows and moves in some way. What I did now for the wake effect mainly was just taking the intersection of the boat collision hull, just a very simplified version of the boat basically, taking the intersection of that with the water surface and then turning that into a curve, so I just have an outline of where they intersect, then splitting that up into a couple of smaller curves and then letting those develop over time and that kind of just lingers around behind the boat and just develops in like a turbulent way. One thing that we never really managed to properly brush strokeify were reflections. So we would have like the individual brush strokes as geometry rendered in the scene, but as they get relatively big compared to the detail of the scene, like for example the brush strokes of the water are quite broad and big compared to the details of the boat. So what we would have is the details of the boat reflecting in the water with a certain amount of granularity that is not represented by the brush strokes themselves. So the brush strokes are these broad things that still reflect in a lot more detail the rest of the scene. And that's something that we wanted to avoid, because this doesn't look like somebody painted it with a brush stroke, it's just like an actual reflection of the ship. There's a new node in Blender 4.2 that allows a lot of hacky, fakery things, which is called the portal node, to just guide the rays as Cycles is rendering the scene in a lot more controlled way. So rather than just rendering the brushstrokes as just a glossy surface, I'm basically manipulating the rays to really render with the same color within that whole brushstroke. So the reflections are broken up a lot more into the actual shape of the brushstrokes, and there's some different iterations of that, and that's how it looks like right now.
So we're preparing all this stuff, partially because Annecy is coming up, and we obviously won't have the final renders of everything, but we will have as much as we can to give people a good idea of how this film could have looked like. After we come back from Annecy, we're hoping to just focus on the breakdowns and getting those to look as good as they can possibly look.
At Annecy, Blender will have a booth at the MIFA, so come visit us there. You can check out some of the latest content and latest updates on Blender, so we will be happy to share that and meet with you guys.
Oh, it crashed. Fantastic.
Oops.
Yay. It's good that I'm saving every 2 milliseconds.